Agent mode in VS Code has evolved quickly, and there's also been a lot of new features such as Copilot Vision, bring your own key, MCP integration, and more. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you how agent mode can be used in your own custom way with all these features while building a budgeting app, one that not only helps you track your finances, but also increases your financial knowledge. So let's go ahead and take a look. Now this video is about agent mode, and to access it, you can click on the chat icon right above here, and you'll notice right over here within chat, by default, it's in ask mode, which is used so that we could just ask it any question and chat will answer. And then there's edit mode, which chat then performs several tasks that you ask it to do, but you do need to accept and review through prompts. And then there's agent mode, which does everything back to back autonomously. And plan allows us to plan our features, and we will see that in action later. For more details on these features, you could check out the VS Code docs right over here. Now within here, you'll see that there's an option where you could choose different models. Right now it's on GPT-5, but there's several others we could choose from. And there's also a microphone that you'll see displayed if you have the VS Code speech extension installed. And then there's the send button. Within here also you can add attachments such as code or even visual images by using a feature called Copilot Vision. So why don't we use a combination of these features such as Copilot Vision and Ask Mode right now to kick things off. Lately, I've been thinking about finance and how to better manage my budget. So I thought a good exercise would be to create a budgeting app. So I'm going to ask Copilot to take a look at how this spreadsheet looks because it's what I've used in the past and I'd like my app to be inspired by it. So I'll take a screenshot of this summary here and also this transaction sheet. The transaction sheet has my expenses and income with fabricated numbers, so don't judge me. And the summary sheet shows how much I've spent and how much I can save. But let's ask Copilot what it sees in this image. What do you see in these two images? And look at that. It gives a detailed summary of how it interprets what it sees in the images. And now I'm just going to ask it to write me a prompt so that I could create a budgeting app because I think it could probably write a prompt better than I can. So let me do that, and that would be useful to do in ask mode. Can you go ahead and write me a prompt that I can use to create me a simple budgeting app that's inspired by the images that you saw that allows me to enter in my income and expenses and then give me a summary of how much money I could end up saving and a chart. And look at that, within a few seconds, it wrote this detailed prompt here that I'm going to copy and paste, and then we're going to switch over to edit mode to see what comes out after running this. All right, so I've navigated to a blank folder for a budget app before we try to execute our prompt, and I've also switched to edit mode. Let me paste our prompt. At the very beginning of the prompt, I want to make sure that I specify that it is a clean, modern, responsive app. And I won't change anything else. And let's see how it works. All right, let's keep the work that is put together. And now I'm going to ask it to run this app. And note that I did switch to agent mode. Now for major moves that it needs to make, like installing some dependencies, it'll prompt me to allow, which is okay. But at least it knows the steps it needs to take in order to install the dependencies. Now, the other thing that's beautiful about agent mode is if a task is taking too long, it could detect it and then ask you if you want to continue waiting like it just did. But if the task picks up where it needed to continue from, agent mode will realize that as it just did now, and it says, okay, do you want to run this command right now? And I'll say allow. And now it just told me that the app is running on this port. So if we go over here and open up this port, let's see how it looks. Now, since I'm not seeing anything, I'm going to tell agent mode that I'm not seeing anything. Blank screen. And in fact, I could give it a screenshot of my problem and drop it in just like we did earlier on. And so this brings us to the topic of debugging, how easy it is to debug with agent mode in conjunction with Copilot Vision. Collecting projects to diagnose why the screen is blank. Implementing necessary updates. And this is pretty cool right here, how instead of like taking up all the realty of the chat with all the explanation of what's going on, it explained it and collapsed it, but I could go back and just see exactly what it's doing behind the scenes and then just collapse this again. All right, I adjusted the screen just so we could see both side by side. Now it's giving me the option to run and build. All right, and after accepting a few changes that it provided, we now have a visual of our budgeting app. All right, so let's play around with the app that it built for us. So I see that I have my starting balance here and then got some additional income minus some expenses, and this will be the ending balance, and that seems right. So let's say I want to click on add over here. Okay, the add button doesn't seem to be doing anything. I see I could modify this and that updates the numbers right away. We'll bring that back to 500. But actually, it looks like I can, yeah, I see. If let's put in a description here, we'll put cable. Now we'll put auto, transportation, and I'll put 500. Now can we add? Yes, we're able to add that. Although maybe I should have named this Uber as if it was like a side gig. If I put in an expense, cable, utility, 100, and add. There you go. Pretty cool. So that seems pretty cool. And there are some changes we could probably add to this, such as like making this editable so that I could like delete line items that I don't want. And maybe add like some graphical chart that shows the expenses versus incomes. So for now, let's assume that we're okay with the way the app is working, but we want to make sure that the code is understandable and want to add some documentation to that. Let's take a look at that next. So if we were to look at our code here on app.tsx, we could see that the code looks nice and organized, but there's not too many comments. So what I could do is go to chat and simply say, hey, can you document with comments all of, and by using the hashtag, I could then specify the context that I want and select app.tsx. Also, notice that there's the button here to add context, and this is where we could add files, images, or just simply drag and drop. So when I click the send button, it goes straight to work. And there you go. You can see that it added some detailed comments starting right from the very beginning and throughout the code, which is great because if you're working with a junior developer or even a senior developer that has been on vacation and they haven't seen the code in a while, additional comments like this helps immensely. Now within chat, there is a concept of participants, which extends the chat as a domain-specific expert. So if I have questions about VS Code, I can use the add VS Code participant, which has knowledge about VS Code and its extension APIs. Likewise, if I have questions about my project, I use the at workspace participant because it can answer questions about my project. The response will be more specific to my local situation and not generic. So for example, we can ask it within our workspace to explain how the code in our active editor works. So in addition to the comments that we have, you can come over here and get summarizations of different sections of the code. So for example, in our comments here, we have a little verbiage regarding what add transaction does, but over here, there's much more detailed information regarding the add transaction function. Now, while I can appreciate how it explained the way my code is working in a very straightforward manner, I do want to mention that I could ask it to have a little bit more personality by saying to explain this using humor and emojis. And it's just an example of how you can customize responses. And look at that. Although it did go a little while including emojis inside the code, which is not exactly what I meant. I just meant in the explanations. I meant explain using humor and emojis in your explanation, not in the actual code. So undo that. And there you go. I'd like to turn our attention now to the concept of custom agents. Custom agents allow you to control how the agent behaves. And in fact, they've gotten so popular that we even have a location here on GitHub where you could find many other custom agents that were created by others. And if you want to create one, you can go ahead and click on the drop down where we have an option for agent, ask, and edit. And you'll see an option for configuring custom agents. And in fact, there is an agent that has been set up that's called plan by default. And you could see how that one was configured by going to configure custom agents and then just clicking on plan. And you could see the structure of it, where you define the name, the description, the tools that it has access to, the handoffs, and then the detailed instructions of how that planning agent should behave. So you can go ahead and create your own simply by going to configure custom agents, selecting create new custom agent. And then at this point, I can go ahead and choose user data, give it a name. And let's say it was for research purposes. And at that point, I could give it the tools that I wanted to use and then define a description of how it should behave. And when I save my research agent, you could see that it appears right here. But let's go ahead and remove that. And what I want to use is the one that came by default, which is the planning agent. And we're going to do that so we can add a feature to our app. So I'll select that, and then I'm going to ask it to create a feature that adds a tip of the day button, which will give me some type of financial knowledge to help me become more savvy with budgeting, investing, and overall finance, and add it to the interface. And I'll submit that, and it will get to work. So what's great here is it's going to create a detailed plan and not touch any of my code because we are in a planning stage. And there I could see all the steps that it created. And at this point, I have the option to start the implementation, or I could open it up in an editor. And what that's going to do is generate a prompt file with the plan details. And here it is. And I could choose to keep this. And if I want, I can go in and modify it and refine it to my liking. But it looks okay the way it is now, so I'm not going to make any changes. And if I navigate to the top, I'll see that I have an option to either run this prompt in a new chat or run the prompt in the current chat. If I decide not to do it now, I can always go to my agent sessions, which is right over here, where I could see all the different agent sessions that I have access to. As you can see, there's a history of them. But for now, what I'm going to do is close that. So let's say I'm ready to run this, and I'm going to run it in the current chat. So let's go ahead to the top and select that option, run prompt and current chat. And now it's going to go ahead and start implementing the tip of the day feature that I asked for it. I'll keep the changes that it's making and allow it to build. And it provides me a summary of the work that it did to add this feature. Now I'll go ahead and close my prompt file. And in the terminal, I'll run my app to see the results. Let's take a look. And there you go at the very top. Today's tip, build financial literacy one small concept at a time. Click the button to reveal today's curated learning bite. Using a high-yield savings account, idle cash for near-term goals should earn competitive interest instead of sitting at a 0% checking account. All right, not bad. Let's click another tip. We could learn about what zero-based budgeting is. And then there's an action step. Pretty cool. So not only do you have a budget app now, but you could also learn at the same time. So now let's talk about source control. I have all this code locally right now, but let's say I wanted to push it all up to GitHub. Well, the first thing I want to do is just make sure that I am logged onto my GitHub account, which you could check from the account icon right here. And then just go ahead and click on the source control icon on the left-hand side here. And to kick things off, we could just simply initialize our repository. Now we see all our files that are currently on track, but to go ahead and stage them all I need to do is go up to here and hit the plus icon above all the files. And now the letter A indicates that they've been staged. Now at this point, I'm ready to commit, but what's really nice is if you look at the icon here to the right, we have the option to generate a commit message automatically with AI. And once I click it, let's see what it puts together for me. And we get this nice detailed explanation, which is pretty cool. And I'll go ahead and now click commit. Once I'm done committing, I can go ahead here and publish, and I'll like my repository to be public. And to the bottom right-hand corner, I have an option to just open it up in GitHub right here. And there we go. With some documentation, description of our tech stack, and steps for getting started. Now, while I could appreciate that we can take some of these steps here within source control and VS Code, we don't always have to do everything manually. And we can leverage MCP, which stands for Model Context Protocol, which essentially allows us to have access to external tools for our agent. And if we click on this icon here, we can see some tools that are natively installed, but any additional MCP servers that we add will also show up here. And to add one, all we need to do is go to our marketplace and type in @MCP. And in our case, we're going to want to install the GitHub MCP server, the official one, which shows up right over here, and I can install. Once I've installed it, if I now go over to our tools list, we can see it show up right over here. And when we hit the drop down, we see some functionalities that it provides us. So why don't we go ahead and test it out by asking chat to give me 3 new feature ideas for this project and open issues for them. And ideally, it could give me 3 ideas and use the GitHub MCP servers to create an issue. So here are my 3 ideas, and right below we could see where it's going to be using the GitHub MCP server. And I will give it permission. Instead of saying allow each time, I'll say always allow. And this is great. It looks like it created my issues here, but I also like to show you that I do have an extension by GitHub that would allow us to see a variety of things such as pull requests and issues. And right over here under recent issues, we could also see it here. When I click on it, I have a nice view of the content within the issues for each of them. And on top of that, just by right-clicking, I can go ahead and assign them to our coding agent. At the bottom right-hand corner, it says issue 1 has been assigned to Copilot. So now if we click refresh, we can see assignees. Copilot is indicated. And I could do the same for the other 2 issues. And of course, if we come here on GitHub, we see the same information is reflected. And on top of that, if we hop on over to our agent sessions, now under GitHub Copilot Cloud Agent, you can see the new tasks that were assigned and just click on any one of them to spin them up. Before I wrap up, there's 2 cool features that I want to show you that many don't know about. The first is that in this video, I've been using external browsers to show the app like this here. But I do want to let you know that you are able to use it within VS Code if you so choose. So the next time you're running an app, If we go to the command palette and typed in simple browser, you're able to put in the URL right here. And then just within VS Code, you could navigate through the app. And this does allow me some flexibility, such as if I wanted to go ahead and experiment with some of the elements here, I can click Start, and it will allow me to go ahead and highlight different parts of the app's elements, such as maybe right over here. And once I click on it, it allows me to have some DOM information that's attached to the chat right now, in addition to a screenshot. And the other feature that I want to show you is that when we choose our models, you see that we have a large list of different models, but maybe we don't want to see all of these. We have the option right below to manage our models, and that's including the visibility of it. So for example, currently we see we have GPT 4.1 and 4.0 that are on this list. If I wanted to, just by hovering over here and double clicking on the eye here, it will hide this from the chat model picker. And you can see that they're slightly grayed out. So now when we come back, it's no longer on the list. The other option that we have here is to add our own models from here by using bring your own key. And here are some here by default that could be added. And of course, you have the option to just search if you wanted to just filter it down, which is all pretty convenient. Thanks for hanging out with me in this video. If you got value out of it, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives like this. And if you want to keep learning, make sure that you also check out this video right here.